What's good, y'all? Welcome back to another video. Today, I'm gonna be reacting to, oh man, the real reason LeBron will never surpass Jordan, man. Now, this video is I want to say 2 years old. Still, man, the real reason he'll never surpass him, in my opinion, LeBron is the GOAT already, man. So, without further ado, we finna get into this video real quick.
Today's video is sponsored by Squarespace, the all-in-one website building platform to help you run your business.
That one right there made me the greatest player of all time.
Yes, sir.
Greatest player of all time. Greatest player of all time.
Michael Jordan's been widely known as the greatest basketball player of all time for really the last 30 years. And no one has ever come as close to challenging that title in the eyes of fans and media more than LeBron James.
Yes, sir.
And while LeBron has made a great case for the argument and believes he's the best player ever, we'll look at both sides, but also the real reasons as to why LeBron James will never and can never be the GOAT.
See, that's what I don't like. Will never and can never. Like, this was before he won his 4th ring. Like, just for the sake of argument, say he wins 3, like he 3-peats and wins like 7. But like Russ, since they got Russ now, so they win with Russ, AD or whatever. Say they like, which I don't think is gonna happen though. But say they like 3-peat. I don't know how that, and he won Final MVP in all 3 of them. I don't get how this man can't be the GOAT, man.
Start things off by understanding the fact that MJ played in a league that was in favor of big men, and with things like hand checking and players having the ability to be much more aggressive and play a lot rougher than they do now. And then almost right after he left the league, both of those things changed, and the game has evolved into a much faster paced style built for
the 90s was not that rough, man. I'm gonna say it again, the 90s was not that rough. The 80s, now the 80s, you can almost kill like you can almost take someone out like for good in the 80s. You can clothesline them, punch them. I seen a couple people sucker punch people in the 80s. But the 90s, like I say maybe 90, 91, them the 2 years that they've been fouling hard, but like from 92 on, like Jordan's run, they were not fouling that hard, man. The bad boy Pistons were already getting old and getting out there. So it was the Bulls' turn, but once they seen they had Jordan, that man was not getting hit like that anymore.
For players to exceed, which is why we've seen a lot less traditional big men in the game today. But with that being said, let's look at some of the most common basic arguments that are made with the fact that LeBron is bigger, stronger, faster, a better rebounder, and a better passer than Michael Jordan. And all of those things are definitely true. But that's also the same exact argument you can make towards a guy like Russell Westbrook being better than Steph Curry. I mean, Russ averages a triple-double, he's much faster, stronger, and a better athlete. But
see, no, you can't use this comparison with Steph, because I don't think Russ is a better passer than Steph. I think it's just that Russ he looks to try to get the triple-double as opposed to Steph, where he's more dangerous as he shoots. Like, I get what they're trying to say, but it's not the same, man. Plus, their decision making is too different. Russ lead the league in turnovers. He been leading the league in turnovers. To Steph, where he doesn't. You can't use LeBron's a bad decision maker because he's not. Neither is Jordan, so that doesn't go for me.
We all know that Steph is the better player. So right off the bat, those things can build onto James' case, but they don't make or break an argument. But with that being said, LeBron may have the better overall game, but MJ's a far better scorer and defender than James ever was.
Okay, so somebody explain, if you're a Jordan fan, please explain to me what's the GOAT or the best player ever? Because he just said LeBron is the better all-around player. So in my head, I would think that would be the GOAT. But that's just me. Which
will lead us into looking at both of these guys' careers in the regular season. Jordan was a 10-time scoring champion, a 9-time member of the All-Defensive First Team, and a 3-time steals leader. And he had one of the most underrated feats in NBA history, winning the Defensive Player of the Year award and a scoring title in the same season. which only himself and David Robinson have ever done. And if you compare this to LeBron James, who's only won 1 scoring title, 5 all-defensive first teams, and never led the league in steals. And while we're here, let's not forget to mention the fact that MJ has the highest career points per game average with 30.1 for his entire career, while LeBron's still sitting at 27.2 points a game. And even though James has been the more efficient scorer and Jordan's been the better overall scorer, scoring efficiently means nothing unless it equates to more wins, which it hasn't. And then
See, and this is another thing I don't like, because Jordan he played in the 90s or whatever. If you look at the competition LeBron was playing versus the competition Jordan was playing, it's really not even close if we're being honest with each other. Like,
all
it's
this
not
is
close
ignoring
at
the
all.
fact that, like I mentioned earlier, the rules now are built for offensive players to thrive and for players to get fouls for passing gas. So even with all of that, these numbers are still skewed heavily in LeBron's favor. And then on the defensive end, we will give it up to LeBron for his ability to guard more positions than Jordan, but even with that, he's still thought of as a far worse defender. So with all the rebounding, assists, defense, steals, and points scored, it led to LeBron winning 4 MVPs compared to the 5 that Jordan's won. With all that being said, within the time they played, it's clear that Jordan's been much more dominant in the regular season. And then you have people that say that one of the reasons LeBron is the greatest of all time is because of the effect that he has on his team. And the fact that when he left Cleveland both times and the Heat, they were a much worse team the season after.
Yes, sir.
While when Jordan retired, his team still nearly made the NBA final.
Facts. All these are facts.
Now this is something that people hear, and they go look it up and it turns out to be true. So they believe it. But they ignore the fact that
that doesn't make sense. If it's true, of course I will believe it if it actually happened.
How much LeBron's teams were constructed just for him. Because if LeGians wanted a player, he's gotten him. I mean, in his first run in Cleveland, they were one of the top teams in the league, and once he left, they became one of the worst until he came back. But I mean, when the centerpiece of your franchise leaves with 0 notice, they're obviously going to turn out to be terrible. And then he
But this is, okay, that doesn't make any sense to me, because Jordan left when he retired the first time. He just went up and left, and he was the... See, it'd be different if... Because people always say LeBron always has... The only way he can win is he has a super team. But how come when he's the only one to leave, the whole team is like that whole organization is in the lottery pick? When Jordan was the one piece to leave, they still made it to I want to say the second round of the playoffs, and they had one of the better records. And both, it was just them being taken. And they, like, tell me a team where LeBron was taken from, and then they were still a playoff team.
to the Heat and does his thing, and when he leaves they win 17 less games, even with Wade and Bosh still on the roster. But let's not forget how they assembled their roster within that time. They got nearly every available stretch 4 they could find, and as many solid centers and perimeter shooters that they could find to stick out on the 3-point lines to stretch the floor, with guys like Rashard Lewis, Ray Allen, Shane Battier, James Jones, and Mike Miller. And when mostly all of those guys left the same season that LeBron did, the next year the Heat had a much different roster, which would obviously make the team play worse. And then most recently he left the Cavs, and they went from the NBA Finals to one of the worst teams in the league this season. But again, let's not forget how they lost Kyrie and didn't get much in return, and then traded half their roster halfway through the season to try and find players that fit better with LeBron. So again, when you completely fit your roster around one guy, and then he leaves, it's not surprising for them to do terrible afterwards. And he did bring that team to the finals, so we do gotta give him credit. But it seems like he's a lot better.
2018 LeBron, the best player I've ever seen. This comment who you think it is. 2018 LeBron was a monster.
Making bad teams great, and Jordan was better at making his great team a championship team. So one of the reasons the Bulls were still so good after Jordan left was because Pippen was in his prime and playing like an MVP, and because the team wasn't built for only Jordan to succeed. But now that we've brought up talk of the NBA Finals, let's look at both of these guys' finals appearances. Michael Jordan is 6-0 in.
Okay, so okay. This gonna sound crazy, but I'm gonna say it. Cause he just said Jordan's team wasn't built around only him to succeed, but the whole team. But LeBron's team was built solely on him. So would that mean that Jordan had a better team than LeBron? So a lot of people say LeBron's team was, of course, better and more stacked. But did Jordan have a better? Was his team actually the one that was better than LeBron?
NBA Finals. Himself and Scottie
So LeBron
Pippen
had
led
to
the
carry
Bulls
everyone
defeating
else.
Magic Johnson and the Lakers, Clyde Drexler and the Blazers, the Charles Barkley-led Suns, Gary Payton, Sean Kemp and the Supersonics, and the Karl Malone and John Stockton Utah Jazz twice. And people say that he couldn't win without Scottie Pippen, which he couldn't have. But on the other hand, we have LeBron James, who had to team up with Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade before he could win one. He did make the finals on that original Cavs team, but got swept by the Spurs. So again, he deserves credit for that. But then he would join the Heat, and with two other superstars get beat by the 2011 Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah, that's a bad
And not
look.
only that, LeBron James completely collapsed under the pressure and was outscored in the NBA Finals by Jason Terry, who came off the bench for the entire series. And then he would come back and beat the Westbrook, Harden, Durant Thunder the next year, and then the San Antonio Spurs, before losing to them in the finals rematch, where the Spurs outscored the Heat by the largest average point differential in NBA Finals history. After
Spurs
that, he would
wasn't
move to
playing that
Cleveland
year.
and be paired up with two more younger superstars in Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love, where they would lose to the Warriors the first year, beat the 73-9 Warriors, and then lose to them the past two seasons after they added Kevin Durant, giving
Yes.
LeBron James a 3-6 NBA Finals record.
That's again. He's 3-6, but the numbers don't really tell the tale of like what was going on in the finals. So you had the Spurs. You had the Spurs when he first went in 2007. He was 22. It was just him against all of them, and they have about three Hall of Famers, and they were all in their prime. And then he got there with Dallas, and I can't. No matter how much no matter how much of a fan I am for LeBron, I don't know what happened then in that Dallas series. So I count the Dallas loss. That Spurs, there was no way he was gonna win. And then you got when they played the Thunder, they beat the Spurs, and then lost to the Spurs. There was no excuse for that one. He was hooping, but nobody on the team was helping. But he lost that one. The 2015 one, he didn't have Kyrie or Kevin Love. This man was the way he was hooping in that finals was crazy. He averaged like a 40-point triple-double almost. And Iggy got it because he held them to like 38, 10, and 15 or 13, whatever it was. 2016, they beat the best team ever, 73-9 Warriors, or the best record ever, I should say. And then the Warriors added KD both years. Jordan not beating the Warriors with KD.
Jordan beat every single finals opponent he had so definitively, he wouldn't even let it be taken to 7 games. And for there to try to be an argument for a player that's lost just as many finals as MJ's won truly doesn't make any sense. For a player that's cracked under the pressure as many times as LeBron has, it's hurt his legacy far too much for him to truly be the GOAT. He's had opportunities in these defining moments of his career, and he just hasn't shown up too many times. I mean, you can't look at Jordan's legacy and really point out very many, if any, real negatives. But that's just not the case with LeBron James. Now, the record alone should be enough to settle the argument, but since it isn't for a lot of LeBron fans, let's look at it this way. I mean, there's no way that Jordan would have ever lost to those Dallas Mavericks, or let anyone outplay him the way they did. Or let the San Antonio Spurs beat him in 5 games by an average of 14 points in...
Okay, the Dallas one, that's true. Jordan wouldn't have lost to Dallas. So I ain't got nothing to say about that one. But the Spurs one, if he was he said he wouldn't let the Spurs beat him by an average of what's it called. But I don't, that's almost irrelevant, because if you don't have no help, you're going to get blown out if the other team is clicking on all cylinders. So I don't know about the Spurs one, but the Dallas one, Jordan ain't getting blown out, man.
And LeBron definitely could have won that first championship against the Warriors, but we can't discredit him too much, because he did win in the second series when they went 73-9, and then these last two we honestly can't put them against him because of the whole snake situation. But I mean, we can't feel too bad for him either, because he's the one who started the whole super team scenario. But that'll lead us to our next point, which is the clutch factor. And both of these guys' desire and ability to close out games. Now there's no denying the fact that the Heat would have lost the first series against the Spurs without Ray Allen. LeBron shot and missed the game-tying shot before Ray Allen knocked it down himself. When all the pressure was on him to save the NBA championship, he failed. And it's not like this was just another big shot in the finals, because the Spurs were 10 seconds away from winning their 4th game and becoming NBA champions unless he made that shot, and he didn't. And he only has that championship because Ray Allen knocked it down. And then we fast forward to his next title when they beat the 73-9 Warriors. And what LeBron recently said made him believe that he's the greatest player of all time. But I mean, when Game 7 was tied with a minute left, LeBron's not the one who hit the go-ahead shot. He did get that block, but Kyrie Irving made the shot, who by the way averaged 27 points a game in that series. Now James did play great, but I don't know how that could have made him feel like the GOAT. Either way, let's be honest, if it were LeBron who hit both of those shots instead, this greatest of all time discussion would be a lot closer. But then to have straight up given up halfway through this past year's NBA Finals and gotten swept hurts his personal case a ton. I mean, LeBron...
He played Isn't that... This is what... Okay, so this had to be when JR was tripping that one game. I mean, what more do you want? LeBron dropped 51. If JR would have just laid it up or kicked it to him, they probably would have won that game and not got swept. But it's LeBron, and the next best player was probably JR or like George Hill or something. Like, they wouldn't finna beat Steph, Clay, KD, and Draymond.
Never had the same level of a winning mentality that Jordan had. He didn't have much of it at all when he first came into the league, but it's something he's developed throughout his entire career. But I mean, Jordan's always had it, even before he was in the league, when he hit...
And it's funny though, because LeBron had the most playoff clutch shots.
Game-winning shot at North Carolina.
I don't even think it's career.
And he's had other playoff moments like the flu game, the game winner on Craig Elo, and the greatest shot of all time that closed out the Jazz, Jordan's career, and his 6th NBA championship. So now by this point, it should be clear who the greatest player of all time is. But one last thing we do have to mention and give credit to that can't be ignored from this argument is LeBron and his longevity. I mean, MJ went to college and retired for the first time at his peak, and for the second time when he still had a couple good years left in him, which gave his main run on the Bulls a span of 13 years. While on the other hand, James is in the middle of his 16th right now, and still playing at an extremely high level, and hasn't shown too many signs of slowing down.
He's in year 18, 19, and they still have he's still a top 5 player, man.
Longevity has led to LeBron passing Michael Jordan in nearly every statistical playoff and regular season category there is, because he's played a lot more games. And when it's all said and done, James has a huge chance to be the league's all-time leading scorer. So his longevity does hold some value, but to be honest, I don't care if he plays for 25 years. If he can't do in 25 years what Jordan did in 13, that's even more of a reason why he shouldn't be the GOAT. We can go ahead and say LeBron is the 2nd greatest player ever. I mean, I don't...
See, the thing is, LeBron had... I mean, Jordan didn't have to play these teams LeBron is playing. I know y'all know the Nets with KD, James, and Kyrie. Like, it's all... This man won a ring, finally won one with AD, and then they stacked another team back up, which is crazy. I'm a KD, like KD's my favorite player, but I think LeBron is the GOAT. But yeah, so you got them in Brooklyn over there that are basically stacked up. Man,
he has any more MVPs in him, and
Jordan didn't have to play no team like that, man.
Maybe
or the Warriors.
2, but even then, that's not on MJ's level. We can go ahead and say that LeBron is the 2nd greatest player ever, but at the height of Michael Jordan's game, he had a much higher peak at his best years than LeBron's ever had. And while LeBron's peak years have been longer, he's never exactly reached that MJ level. And like I said, when more superstars come to LA, that might bring them a championship or 2, but to be honest, I feel LeBron's already lost his opportunity to become the greatest of all time. Because when you look through all of this that's been laid out, there's just too many negatives already on LeBron's side for him to be thought of as a better player than Michael Jordan. By his disappearance in big moments, leading to him needing to be saved in the finals, or just flat out losing, his inferior defense and scoring, and his amount of career achievements. He's a great player, and he has a ton of positives on his side, but when you're comparing him to a player that has few to no negatives about his entire career, there's not a true argument. And I think that's all that needs to be said. But you know, while we're on the topic of the greatest of all time, I got one last all-time great to mention, and that's Squarespace. Now, if you're looking to start up a new business in the new year, then this is where you start. Because every great business has a great website, and Squarespace makes website design simple by having all the tools you could ever need in one place.
My man just plugging. Alright, so that's it for the video, man. That video, I'm sorry it didn't convince me what, like, Jordan is great. And if you say Jordan is the GOAT, I'm not going to be like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know basketball, nah. I'm not saying none of that. Like, I could see where you're coming from, but in my opinion, the greatest basketball player is LeBron James. Because what's it called said in this video, he's the best all-around player. He's a better all-around player than Jordan. So in my head, I would think that must mean you're the better basketball player, which makes you the GOAT. But I don't know. But like, comment, share, subscribe. Comment what y'all think. If y'all rocking with Jordan or LeBron. Man, that's it for the video. Like, share, comment.